Hello, and welcome to another episode of Boundless Body Radio. I'm your host, Casey Ruff, and today we have another amazing guest introduced to you now. Lindsey Byrne is a functional medicine certified health coach and a certified RE Code 2.0 health coach. After witnessing her mother's memory decline over the course of a few years, Lindsey had initially felt hopeless and believed that there was no solution. However, her perspective changed when she coincidentally met someone who had successfully reversed her own severe early onset Alzheimer's symptoms. This encounter sparked her interest, leading Lindsey to dedicate nearly 3,000 hours to researching and studying the subject. As a result, she has accumulated a wealth of evidence-based resources that she is eager to share with others. Her area of expertise lies in health coaching, where she assists individuals in making lifestyle changes more efficiently, easily, and sustainably compared to attempting it alone. She strongly believes in spreading the message that an Alzheimer's diagnosis does not signify the end, as there are ways to improve the situation. She has personally experienced these changes and is familiar with effective strategies. You can find Lindsey on her website at www.thecognitivehealthcoach.co.uk. Lindsey Byrne, what an absolute honor it is to welcome you to Boundless Body Radio.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
It's such an honor to host you. The work that you're doing is absolutely incredible. And as we said in the introduction, you are very eager to share this message out with others. I was listening, so I've gotten recently in the last few years very much into Formula One. So I now get to listen to a lot of people from where you are in England, as Formula One is huge over there, which is great. And I was listening to a Formula One podcast a few weeks ago, and it was a special episode that was dedicated to Alzheimer's. Basically, the host of the podcast is going through his mother declining rapidly with Alzheimer's, how absolutely terrible it is. It's a terrible situation for the family. It's gotten much worse over the course of this last year. They did an interview with Sir Jackie Stewart, who is also a Formula One racer. It's going through with his wife, and his son was on as well, talking about how terrible it is. And this whole episode is just like, this is awful. There's no cure. There's nothing we can do. We've got front row seat to all of it, and it's terrible. And I just, like, I sit there and I think, like, if they only knew. And I think, like, maybe I'll send him an email, or maybe I'll try to share an article, or give her your contact information or whatever. And it seems like if you're not ready to hear it, this sounds like complete lunacy, and people are not willing to hear the message. It's so frustrating.
You're frustrated.
Oh,
I'm so frustrated. I hear so many famous people talking the exact same way. It's on the news all the time. There's been so many famous people talking about it in the UK recently. They all say there's nothing you can do and that there's no cure. And I'm so frustrated because, like you, I would love to get in touch with them. How do you get in touch with these people? I actually tried. I tried quite hard with a few celebrities who'd been talking about it, but you just get batted away by their production staff or their agents or whoever. And then I don't know how to get the message out there more effectively than doing this. This is my way.
Yeah, I think this is probably the best way that we can do, is show examples of people who are getting better, or talk about ways that people can get better, because you're right. Like, people don't want to hear the message. It's so sad, but there is an upswelling of people that have suffered enough, especially family of people that are suffering, that are willing to at least try. So I would love to hear your personal story and how you were able to change your mind about some of this stuff. I wonder if there would have been a time that I would have come to you and said, hey, you can do some lifestyle changes and improve the health of your mom. And you might have thought I was nuts. I don't know.
I really hope I wouldn't have. You're right. People have to be ready. But I really hope I would have been open-minded, because it wasn't so much that I changed my mind. When we first noticed my memory getting worse, I did Google it straight away. And of course, you get the NHS website, Alzheimer's Society website, and they just say no cure, and you think there's nothing you can do. And I think I obviously gave up at that point. I thought, yes, well, that's what I thought. I thought there was nothing you could do. But when I met this guy who'd reversed his symptoms, that's all he had to say. I mean, we were just on a forum. He was talking to somebody else, and he just said that he had almost completely reversed his symptoms of Alzheimer's. And I just went, stop, what? I interjected. I said, you've got to tell me more about this. We took it offline, and he sent me all the information. And honestly, I couldn't believe that all this information was available, but that nobody knows about it. And I was in equal measure really, really angry that I'd wasted time and really, really excited that there was something that you could do. And I couldn't wait to get my mum on the protocol. Now, here in the UK at that time, it wasn't that easy. I couldn't find any practitioners. And I got in touch with the UK Alzheimer's Society, and they just poo-pooed me and sent me away. And I kept going back and asking to talk to somebody, to researchers, to whoever. And when I finally got through to talking to a researcher, they said to me, yes, we are aware of Dr. Bredeson's work. We've seen the trial data. The trials are too small, so we can't recommend it. And I just sort of stumbled for a little while. And I said, well, you're the Alzheimer's Society. Why don't you fund a bigger trial? And it's beyond me. It is beyond me why we can't do something about this. You know, type 2 diabetes, you used to think there was nothing you could do about that other than take insulin. And now everybody knows that you can just change that, just completely reverse that with diet and exercise and a few lifestyle changes. Why should any other chronic condition be any different? We should at least be open-minded enough to look and see, are there some things that we can do?
Yeah. Wow. That must, yeah. I could see exactly what you're.
Got on a rant there.
No, it's perfect. It is perfect. I would go on a rant too. I could see exactly why you would feel equal parts frustrated, but also so excited that there is something you could do. So when was this? What time frame wise when you started learning about?
Oh, the time frame was amazing because I found out about this in the pandemic. My coaching business, my executive coaching business, my leadership development business, my training business had fallen completely apart. So I had nothing to do. And so threw myself into helping my mum, and then decided this was it. This was my new vocation in life. This is meant to be. I have all this time for a reason. And retrain. First of all, I had to retrain as a functional medicine health coach first, because you need that basis first. And then as soon as I'd done that, actually I hadn't even finished that, I started with the Apollo training to be the Recode health coach as well.
Wow. Okay. And how sick has your mom been at that point?
Well, at the point where we just got her on the protocol, she could hold a conversation, she understood what was going on, she never got confused, but 15 minutes later it was all gone, all of it. But there'll be nothing, you can't carry on a conversation. I think she was doing quite a good job of trying to hide it herself. And I'm not saying she was doing that consciously. Maybe it's like a self-defense mechanism. You do find a lot of people do kind of withdraw a bit. And she'd gotten to the point where she was quite withdrawn. It was hard to start a conversation, I think, because she'd gone through a time of, if you were having a conversation, guessing at the answers, trying to hide that she couldn't remember. And she got to the point where she was actually a bit withdrawn, wouldn't start a conversation, would only answer very minimally. And she'd stopped joining in with anything, really. It was really hard work to have a conversation. And then it took a while because, as I say, we couldn't find a practitioner here in the UK to start with. So I started messing with her a bit. I started giving her some supplements. I didn't know what I was doing. Oh my God, I'm looking back, that could have been quite dangerous. I don't recommend that to anyone. I wouldn't do DIY supplements now. But we tried to change some of her lifestyle, some of her diet. I started her on some supplements. And I felt like she got a tiny bit better, but I didn't know whether that was wishful thinking. And then after a few months, we found a practitioner. She wasn't fully Bredesen trained. She'd had some training in the past, but she wasn't up to date. But she knew enough. She knew enough for me at the time. So I got some testing done with her. So blood tests, hormone tests, toxin tests, that kind of thing, a DNA test. And we found out what some of the root causes are. And then we started supplementing properly. And I think everything I'd been messing with had got her to a certain point where she was ready to springboard into some improvements fairly quickly, because comparing her improvement to some of my clients today, it was quite fast then. So I think the supplementing I'd been doing had got her to a certain point, and then once we knew bespoke exactly what she needed, she improved within just a few months. And we got to the point where she still forgets some things. She won't do all the lifestyle changes. She won't do everything. So we got to the point where she now can remember conversations from weeks ago. She does forget something still, but she'll quite often like pick up, if you haven't seen her for a week, she'll pick up something you were talking about the week before and ask, how's that going? You know, she's aware she can continue conversations, and she started playing along with the TV quizzes again, which she hadn't done for a few years. So I'm kind of happy. She's not all the way back because I don't know if we caught it a little bit too late, or whether we could expect better changes if she would do all the lifestyle stuff as well. But, you know, she's 88 and, you know, change is tough at that age. And my dad's 91. So, you know, change is tough for them both at that age. So I'm kind of happy now that she's as good as she is. As long as we have paused the decline and she can just carry on like that, I think we're all happy.
Yeah, that's amazing. Okay, I want to talk about that. So we'll pick that up in a second, but I do want to ask, knowing what we know now about the signs and symptoms of when this is starting to appear, we're noticing it younger and younger. And it used to be like kind of funny, and we laugh about it. And oh, Sally's got brain fog now. That's really funny. She can't remember things. When you look back on your mom, knowing what you know now, when would you have noticed, if you knew what to look for, when would you have noticed signs and symptoms that maybe things are going downhill? If you had to guess now.
She was really good at hiding it. So I'd probably say 5 years before we got her on the protocol, you would notice one or two little things, but it's the kind of thing that people just dismiss. You know, when you're having a senior moment and you just laugh it off, or, you know, you just can't remember something and you just laugh it off. Like you say, we say now, don't we? We say, oh, I'm having a bit of brain fog, I'm having a senior moment, and you just ignore it.
Yeah, I remember this is fallen out of vague, thank goodness, but we used to call it old timers. And people would, again, just kind of joke about grandpa just forgetting stuff and can't carry a conversation, doesn't remember my name. Well, that's very serious. Okay, so current condition now, you're pretty happy with everything kind of stabilizing. Of course, very difficult for people who have lived as long as she has to change their lives. When I talk to people who have lost their mental health and regain it, and also talk to family members about it, I don't know if there's a greater sense of joy doing anything else. People are ecstatic when they get some of their life back. They remember things again. They can participate in TV quiz shows. Like, and the family is also like absolutely ecstatic. Is that pretty much what it's like?
Oh yeah, I mean, and I love this work so much because that's exactly what it's like. Everybody, even before they've seen the improvements, you know, from the first session when they finally realise there's something that you can do, and they've got some hope. It's just lovely to watch.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
You mentioned type 2 diabetes, and I think of the work of the doctors Unwin over in the UK and how they are helping to reverse type 2 diabetes. And that's their whole thing, is like people don't have any hope. They're told you have a chronic progressive disease. If it's chronic and progressive, it's only going to get worse. To learn that you could do something and it might improve, like that's amazing. Of course, that would cause tons of help, not only with the person who's suffering, but also the family, who I would argue is suffering pretty much just as much.
Well, yes. I mean, the horrible thing about this disease is once it's progressed so far, I guess the client doesn't actually know. We don't know, do we? We don't know whether they're happy in their world or what. But it's horrible. You're right. Horrible for the whole family to watch this. And, you know, particularly when their loved one doesn't remember who they are, or gets upset or frustrated or frightened because they don't know who you are and why you're in their home, or why aren't they at home? They're saying, I want to go home, and they are at home. You know, it's it was always the thing that I dreaded the most. I'm not going to say that I thought that much about about diseases. I'm not that depressive. I don't know what the word is. But if I thought about a disease that I didn't want to get, it would have been obviously cancer, but Alzheimer's even more so. My grandma had it. She had dementia. My mum's mum, and I don't know if that weighed on me a bit. If that's it sort of made me think about it more. But yeah, I think it's just such a horrible one.
Yeah. Yeah, pretty terrible to lose your own sense of identity and all the memories you've acquired over your lifetime. So when she was first diagnosed, what course of action was recommended by the medical system? Was she recommended different pharmaceuticals or different procedures? Like or was it just like go home? There's nothing we can do.
So, yeah, I feel really bad about this actually. Our family have never been very good at talking about the important stuff, about the difficult stuff. So, we've never talked about health, never talked about emotions. We're not that kind of family. And so, when we could see what was happening and I had this option suddenly in front of me, obviously, we needed to start a conversation. And I didn't even know how to start the conversation because she was in denial. And I took her to the doctor to get her diagnosed. And I don't feel good about this, but I took her without really telling her what we were going for. So the doctor did some tests and the doctor did all the talking. When we came back from the doctor, she was in absolute denial. And I actually think she'd forgotten what he'd said by the time we got home, because then we had a bit of a family conference and she just was in absolute denial. Outwardly, she must have known there's something to it because there's no way she's never been one for taking pills at all, and whether that's supplements or anything, she would not like taking pills, but she does take all the supplements that are recommended now. So outwardly she was in denial, but she was open to talking to the practitioner that I'd found, and that was great actually. The doctor himself said that he wanted to put her on a pharmaceutical, and he said, I don't know if it will do any good. He shared that his mum was a similar age to my mum and she was on it, and she got a little bit brighter for a few months, but it was short-lived. I mean, what a depressing message. And he's trying to give you a drug that has got side effects and not that much upside by the sounds of it. So, yeah, that was the end of that. We left and we didn't come back.
Wow. I would think even to like have a placebo effect, you'd want to like at least talk up the drug, like, oh, this is great. This will help 30% or make something up, like be a little brighter.
I know a placebo would do well. The fact that he said she was a little bit brighter for a few months, maybe that was the placebo effect, because you would expect at least that.
Sure. Wow. Okay. I'm going to ask you to speculate here. I have my ideas. You hear about this in the system, how it's diagnosed, the treatments, a lot of pharmaceutical stuff. We know that the pharmaceutical direction that we've been going on has been largely fraudulent and fraught with all kinds of different problems and wasting all this money and drugs that don't really work. Do you think that there is a reason that you have gone to the Alzheimer's, people who are making the rules and regulations, and they say, we know nothing about that. The trials are too small. We can't fund bigger ones. Do you think there's a reason for that? Do you think there's vested interest, without getting like too conspiracy theorist here? Do you think that there is powers that be that want this message to be suppressed?
I think if you think about the Alzheimer Society or the NHS here, the pharmaceutical companies obviously have a vested interest in doing clinical trials for drugs they can sell. So that is their driver. And obviously there's a big linkage between the pharmaceutical companies and the NHS, and the Alzheimer Society fund trials. So they've got good relationships with the pharmaceutical companies. I don't want to get conspiracy theorist about it. I don't want to say that they're suppressing information or anything like that, because who knows? I would hope they wouldn't, but you can see it's not in their interest to push it. If there's things people can do that improve their symptoms and there's no money in it, then they're not going to advertise it. I would really hope that they wouldn't suppress it, but
yeah.
Who knows?
I really appreciate that careful answer. I'm sorry to put you in a sticky spot as far as that goes. If you email me later and say, hey, you should edit that out, I'll be happy to edit it out. But I appreciate that. It's hard when down on the ground, this level, like people are suffering so greatly that you would really hope that as they learn different information, they can be forthright with it. I'll just say I hope that is the case as well.
Yeah.
Tell us about what you learned about the protocol specifically and about Dr. Dale Bredesen. What specific things did you learn that gave you so much hope? What things in the lifestyle could you potentially change?
There's so much, and it all makes such a lot of sense. The first thing I did was I read the book. Well, actually, the first thing I did is I watched a couple of videos of talks by Dr. Bredesen. And then I read the book, and it was quite clear that there was a lot that you could do yourself. Obviously, the testing you need a practitioner for, and the supplements, you need to find out what your root causes are to work out exactly what supplements will work for you. But there's just so much in the lifestyle. So it is diet, it is exercise, it is sleep, stress, good relationships, brain stimulation, whether that is just going out and having conversations with friends, or whether that is brain training or learning new things. But there's so much. I mean, basically every aspect of your life, and making sure that you are minimizing your toxic load. So not, cleaning up your environment, not having too much interaction with smelly cleaning materials, chemical cleaning materials, the chemicals they put in our food and in our personal care products, the creams you put on your face, your deodorant, your everything. It all makes so much sense, because if you think about it, pretty much every chronic illness is growing at the moment, isn't it? Every chronic condition and there's lots of new ones that we didn't know about. When I was a kid, I didn't know any kids with asthma.
Absolutely not.
And allergies, and cancer was nowhere near as big a thing as it is today. I remember seeing something on the TV when I was a kid, and they said that in my lifetime I would know people who got cancer. I would know somebody who got cancer, and now it's like 1 in 2. I mean, it makes so much sense, doesn't it? That it's something that we're doing. And that's what gave me a lot of hope, really. I'd always been keen on trying to be healthy. I'd always been keen on looking after my nutrition, eating as healthily as I can. But there are so many mixed messages out there about that too. What is healthy? So yeah, having something really structured that was easy to follow. I say easy to follow, as in you understand it. It just does take quite a lot of change for people. But then I guess if you are facing potentially dementia, why wouldn't you? Why wouldn't you make those changes?
Yeah, really good point. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about exactly what Alzheimer's is, and maybe some of the potential causes. As I understand it, it's similar to what you're saying. There's so many different factors that could be a cause, and therefore there's so many different routes of treatment and lifestyle changes, and some could be more effective than others in certain people, or other people might just need like different combinations. Is that correct?
Yes, that is absolutely correct. So they found lots of different causes, and some of them could be through hormonal imbalances. And women are twice as likely to get Alzheimer's as men, because obviously we go through the menopause and you have that hormonal upheaval at that time. So it could be hormonal, not necessarily just through menopause, any other hormonal issues. So much of what we put on our skin or what they put in our food is a hormone disruptor. Everybody's as likely to encounter that. So there's all the toxins that we might encounter, that, pesticides and weed killers and stuff all over our food. Hormones and growth hormones, and antibiotics injected into animal food. So there's all of that. So where have I gone? Toxins, hormones. So there might be something, I hesitate to say genetic, because our genes are not predetermining what will happen to us. But there may be certain little genetic snips. Maybe you're not as good at detoxing as some other people, and maybe you're not as good at processing some vitamins as other people. And that's where some of these tests come into play, and so that you can supplement around that. Obviously, if you have a head trauma, that's in the news a lot. Football, etc., is in the news a lot. But again, there's a lot you can do around that. DHA, which is one of the components of omega-3s, they've done lots of trials showing that high dosages of DHA are very neuroprotective in football players, etc. So there's all of that. Obviously, we need to exercise more. We all live much more sedentary lifestyles now. So just not getting things moving. If we get things moving, then you're going to get more oxygen and more nutrients to the brain. And anything that is good for your heart is good for the brain. So if we're not moving, that can be an issue. So many causes. And I want to give everybody a little bit of hope that nobody is going to have one cause. There's never going to be just one cause. Our brains are really resilient. Our bodies are really resilient. If there was just one problem, our bodies will be able to work around that. It's when you've got a few, and then obviously you can find out what they are through all the testing and try and improve things that way.
Thank you. That was a really good explanation. We hear metabolically in the brain that the brain is awash with glucose, but is unable to use it. And so sometimes it's referred to as type 3 diabetes. You mentioned hormones. So I'm sure one of the main causes could also be insulin and insulin resistance.
Definitely. I mean, sugar in itself is inflammatory. And we're not built to have this amount of sugar, are we? It's so prevalent in our diet now. When we were cave people, there was fruit available in the summer, but there was no sugar available in the winter. And so we'd be in ketosis all winter, and we were much more metabolically flexible, and we could move in and out of ketosis. So yes, sugar is inflammatory, but also as we age, our brains become less able to use glucose as a fuel source. Not so ketones. So our brains will prioritize ketones if they can have both. They'll prioritize and take the ketones first as an energy source. And you probably got elderly relatives or older people that start to get a real sweet tooth as they get older. And that is basically their brain crying out for fuel. And if we could just get them into ketosis, or some of my older clients who really, aren't in a position to change their diet, like my mum and dad, they're at an age now where it's just too difficult for them. You can supplement with exogenous ketones. And your brain will prioritize using that first. I mean, I'd recommend the diet first. So let's do it naturally if you can, but supplement if you have to. Insulin is inflammatory, too much insulin. So that is going to disrupt all your hormones as well. You're absolutely right. And they do call it type 3 diabetes. This is not the only cause of dementia and Alzheimer's, but yes, it's one of the biggies.
Yeah.
So definitely one, and one that you can control so easily just by changing your diet.
Yep. And I was going to ask you, what were the things that your parents were not so much willing to do at this point? And it's such a bummer that diet is one of those, because in my opinion, that's probably one of the strongest things you can do. If nothing else, like you said, it's one thing that you really can control yourself. And, if that gets you down the road a ways, making progress, that's phenomenal. People, they hear keto. Like one of my clients this morning was asking me what the keto diet, he was asking me questions about it. I'm like, okay, well, there's this quote unquote, like the keto diet. And, you see it on magazine covers, and it's like, okay, you want 70% fat, you want 20 to 25% protein, and maybe like 5% carbohydrate. And you make fat bombs, and you put fat in a lot of things, and I had, at some point when I was first learning about this, I had my clients drink olive oil if they weren't getting enough fat in their day. And thank goodness we've learned that it's not the diet, it's not the keto diet, it's what you said, ketosis. Being in a state of
Mm,
ketosis is
mm.
marvelous and super healthy. Can you reiterate one more time what is so beneficial about being in ketosis when it comes to brain health? And we can expand that and say what other things tend to get better when we spend a little bit of time in ketosis?
So ketosis is, we're meant to be in ketosis, as I mentioned. When we were cave people, we'd be in ketosis all winter. Um, and ketones just make you feel so sharp mentally. Um, and even from an evolutionary point of view, it makes sense, doesn't it? If in the winter we're having to run around and try and find food, trying to remember where there's food, where could we go to get food, and trying to be creative, we need that. That's the time where we need it. So I think that's evolutionary, a really good thing, a really strong message. And like I say, your brain will prioritize ketones for energy. So if you're not making any ketones or taking any in as a supplement, if your brain is not able to use glucose as a fuel source, what's your brain going to do? It's going to start battening down the hatches. It's going to start shrinking in, and losing the bits of the memory that are perhaps less important, so the more recent stuff, so that you can hang on to the really important stuff, who you are, and that kind of thing, until the last minute. Um, so if we can get into ketosis, that provides that fuel, and you can use all of your brain again. Um, Obviously, sugar is inflammatory. The keto diet is not inflammatory. It's an anti-inflammatory diet, so that makes us feel better as well. We're using our own fat stores, so we're getting healthier. The whole point of being able to lay down fat when we have sugar is so that all summer we're eating fruit, which raises our insulin levels so that we store the fat, the sugar as fat, to use over winter. But what are we doing these days? Sugar and carbs are available all the time. We're perpetually telling our body, lay down fat stores, the winter's coming, and the winter never comes in terms of the diet. So, yeah, it's so good. The keto diet was invented, I guess is the word, developed many, many years ago in the late 1800s as a cure for epilepsy. And it cures so many other things as well. So many of my clients' partners tell me they've lost weight, they feel sharper, their achy, sore joints have cleared up. So many other things that the partners of my clients start to enjoy when they're joining in.
It's amazing. It's once you get to that and you adjust to it, I find so many people are not willing to give it up. Like cake is just not worth it anymore. Donuts are just not worth
It
it
isn't.
anymore. It's just not like to feel good
It
and have
isn't.
energy. It's amazing.
Yeah, exactly. The thing is, right? Most of our decisions and our cravings about food are not from us, they're from our gut bugs. If you feed your gut bugs sugar, you're going to grow all the wrong kind of gut bugs who are sending messages to your brain saying more sugar, more sugar, more sugar. And we're on a downward spiral into an unhealthy body. But if you start feeding, and your listeners will recognize this, when you eat something a bit rubbish and you get into a little bit of a habit, you crave it, don't you? And then eventually you kind of pull yourself together and you say, no, that's it. I'm going to go on a healthy eating time. And you start eating all the healthy stuff, lots of colourful vegetables and salads and all the colours of the rainbow. And you start craving it because you are feeding the right gut bugs and they are sending the messages to the brain. That is what we want. So no wonder.
Yeah.
Um, No wonder you don't want cake anymore. It's just not worth it.
It's just not worth it. No. And we've got so many people talking about it and approaching the diet in different ways. And so I see Dr. Bredesen writing, and it's more like kind of the plant-based side of things where you're eating more vegetables. I see somebody like Dr. Chris Palmer, author of Brain Energy. From what I understand, he's definitely not carnivore, but more like omnivore. We see Dr. Georgia E. just released a book, Change Your Diet, Change Your Mind. She just came on and talked about her book. She's fully carnivore. So clearly, the component that unifies everything is bringing the carbohydrates down however you do it. Do you have any kind of opinion on if leaning one way or another is better? Or do you think we're so sure about things like the processed foods, the sugar and all that stuff, as long as we get that down, regardless of how you do it, you're probably okay? Like, what do you think?
I genuinely think get the sugar down and get the ultra processed foods down, get all of those additives out of your food, and we're probably going in the right direction. I would say there are many different versions of the keto diet out there. There is no the keto diet. You're right. But I think different versions of it will suit different people. You know, some people, you look like the kind of guy who could perhaps be a bit more on the carnivore side. You're muscly, you look like you're really active. I bet you need your protein. And, some people's health type will just tell you they need a bit more protein and they'll probably do well with a bit more of towards carnivore. I don't know, we don't know yet, do we? We don't know. We haven't got enough research on it. I'd feel really bad about cutting out too much of the veggie stuff, non-starchy veg, because there's a lot of phytonutrients in there and they're good for us. And I know, because I did my DNA at the same time as my mum, I know I'm not good at processing B vitamins. And I feel great. I mean, I feel great on the keto diet, but I feel great supplementing B vitamins. And I think it's made a really big difference, actually. So I wouldn't want to cut out veg completely. But yeah, I think different health types, different body types will need different. And I think people know. I think, once you're eating in a healthy fashion, you know what things suit you. You know if you eat something and it doesn't really agree with you, you know what you feel great on. And I think we just need to get a bit better at listening to our bodies and letting our body tell us this is what you need. Yeah. I think, this advertising, the marketing of fast foods, what we've done to our bodies with all the ultra processed foods, I think we've forgotten how to listen to our bodies and what's suiting us.
That's such a good point. What a lovely answer. I love that. We do really appreciate the carnivore diet around here, but a few weeks ago, I'm doing an interview with a woman who was bipolar, having manic episodes, put it completely in remission. She's a vegetarian. What am I going to say? Like, oh, you should go carnivore, plant toxins. Like, I'll get all the hate mail from all my carnivore friends, but it's like, you're right. Everybody's different. We process things differently. She had just an aversion that she developed as a child to meat. So of course she's not going to go and eat meat. So I love that we have all of those different approaches. And even, again, Dr. Georgia Eat in her book, it's like she is on the carnivore side. That's what she does best with. But she had outlined several diets that are all, anybody could do and choose one. And again, what you said, I think, is so amazing. Eat and then pay attention to how you're feeling. Your body can tell you. And once you get that sensitivity back, I would argue by going on a ketogenic diet would help a lot. Then your body can tell you. You mentioned exercise. You're talking to a personal trainer who was taught for 17 years that exercise is really great for your physical body. And I'm not going to say that's not true, but I am going to say that I'm very surprised that I am now at the point to say I'm bet you that exercise is better for your brain than it is for your body, hands down. What do we know about exercise? Are there different types of exercise that are better, or is it just getting movement? And how does exercise relate to brain health?
All exercise is good. Obviously, if we're doing aerobic exercise, you're getting a lot of blood circulating. You're getting the nutrients and the oxygen to your brain, so that's really important. But strength exercise is really important as well, because I don't really understand the hows and whys. I've read lots of research and nobody seems to be kind of saying what the cause and effect is, but the correlation seems to be the more you build muscle strength, the better your brain. So they found that correlation. I don't think I've read anything that tells me why, but I'll take it at face value. And, as we get older, flexibility is really important as well. So a lot of falls happen because we're not as flexible as we used to be. So flexibility also really important in fitness. So, and if we have a fall, that's just going to have a terrible effect on the whole body and the brain because we're going to do less. It's the start of a downward spiral, isn't it? So yeah, all exercise is good. Do what is fun to you. I mean, don't punish yourself. There's no way I'm going to the gym. There is nothing on God's earth that could make me go to the gym. You can find your own fun exercises, your own fun way of moving. With other people, doing it socially can help you to really enjoy it. And there is some research that shows that if you're doing some sort of thinking while you're exercising, that is doubly good for you. So, like partner dancing, having to follow somebody else's cues, using your brain to remember steps while you're dancing and getting that exercise is really good. Or even just if you're out for a walk, playing games with each other. My husband and I, we play stupid games as we're out for a walk. We'll play a game where I'm saying girls' names beginning with A, and he's saying boys' names beginning with A. And when we run out, we have to move to B. And it's who can get the last word in at Z wins.
I love it. That's a great game. I might steal that. That sounds fun.
And you can do that with anything, can't you? It doesn't have to be girls' and boys' names. Naming all the states, we always get stuck around about 47, 48.
That's pretty good. It's pretty good for not living in America.
Yeah.
That's great. I love all of that. I love that you mentioned strength training. This is pure speculation, but I wonder if a good mechanism is, at least if you're strength training, building a little bit more muscle, you will have a place to store carbohydrate and thus be maybe just a little bit more insulin sensitive on the metabolic side. There's probably lots of other reasons, but
that makes sense.
I love what you said about if you can do it with other people. Like I was on the ice playing ice hockey a few days ago, and you don't realize the level of like cooperation and decision making and like all these things working towards a common goal with your buddies, even though they're talking smack at you all the time. Like you're still like moving together and working together. There must be a component of that should be really good for humans' brains, where we evolved, cooperating with each other.
It is so important for the brain. Social interaction, even if you're not talking, if it's just looking at cues. If you're participating in a team sport where you've got to keep your eye on where everybody is and look for the cues and know, they're going to pass to me any minute now. But if you are talking as well, all of that is a really good workout for the brain. Just going out and talking to friends is a really good workout for the brain. Yeah. You're not just listening, you're also interpreting. You're interpreting not just the words, but the body language and the nonverbal cues and what tone are they using, what words are they emphasizing. It's setting off all kinds of memories in your mind and sparking all these memories so that you can come up with a response. Such a great workout. And so if you can do that in a sporting environment as well, you're getting
Love that.
double whammy.
Yeah, I love that. One of my favorite books is called Go Wild, and they kind of set up a scenario. First is the scenario that you would not like because it isn't a gym, where you go and you get on a treadmill and you're plodding along and you're watching the terrible news that's on TV on all the screens and breaking news, and it's all negative. And like, yeah, you're moving. That's one thing. Good. It's great. It's better than nothing. Take that same scenario, now put that person on a trail where you have to analyze different textures and undulations, and there might be a bear chasing after you and birds, and there's so much sensory coming at you that you have to be so much more present. You're using a lot more of the brain. So I completely agree. Like if you can move, do anything, but like if you could do something with other people, have conversations, or be outside where there's more sensory, even better,
Yeah, absolutely. And it's not just the more sensory stuff outside either. It's also something about being in nature, breathing in the fresh air, the whatever the chemicals are that the trees are sending out. That's just really good for you as well.
Yep, I love that.
I don't know about you. I'm just really happy when I'm outside and it's sunny. It just makes me really, really happy. So why not? A bit of joy has got to be good for the brain as well.
Exactly. Yeah, I've noticed as I've gotten older that I definitely get affected by the seasons. And when it's winter and really snowy and cloudy around here, I feel a lot different than when it's sunny and I can take in the bright blue sky and a big sun. Yeah, we both know in northern climates it's pretty rough.
Yeah.
Looking forward to spring.
I don't know if you can tell. You can see there's a light on my face there. That's a sad lamp. I've got a huge sad lamp in the corner.
Good call. It's working, by the way. You're not very sad. I can tell you that. So you mentioned, we talked about nutrition and exercise. What are some of the other things? Again, there's tons, but what are some of the more like impactful things? You mentioned sleep and stress. Like, what are some of the things that you could present to people, depending on how they're testing, what the results are, that could really help them as well?
Yeah, absolutely. So sleep is so important. And I think it's a really knotty area because if you've ever struggled with sleep, if you've had any bouts of insomnia, the last thing you want people doing is telling you how important it is, because that's just really frustrating because it's important and you can't get any. But there are so many things that you can do, and I think it can be really difficult for people because if you're not sleeping, everybody's got an opinion, everybody's got a tip. You've probably tried them all, maybe individually. And perhaps actually you need to try a lot of them all at the same time and give yourself a bit of a break and, just kind of shrug and say, look, this is not the be all and end all. Take it quite calmly. And if you're not sleeping already, nothing's getting worse, is it? So anything that you can do to improve your sleep, all of the sleep hygiene factors are really important to try all of them and see what works for you. And there's other things you can do as well. I mean, I think if you've tried everything and nothing is working, there's CBTI, which is cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia, which might be able to help you reset. Because sometimes if you've been suffering with insomnia for quite a while, quite a few months, your brain might have reset to that. So you just need a bit of a shake-up. I mean, if you've slept well ever in your life, then your brain knows what to do. You can get that back.
I love that.
So that's really good. And, maybe it is stress, because you mentioned stress as well. Maybe if stress is playing a part in that, if you are stressed, if you're lying awake at night and you can't stop thinking, you can't switch it off, you're ruminating on the same thoughts, then we need to deal with the stress as well, which might be back to exercise. It might be down to mindfulness. It might be reframing things and trying to find what you can control and what you can't. I mean, there's lots of different approaches. But those are two really important things that you can work on as well.
Yeah, I love that. And that just, again, to me, takes me back. Like, maybe this is another good reason to re-examine nutrition, because I'll ask you, do you notice anybody who doesn't improve their sleep or their ability to deal with stress once they start running their brain on ketones? Do you find anybody that doesn't improve those things?
I have come across people who fast and that affects their sleep, but generally they can get that back. I mean, I know I've got an Aura ring. Lots of people use different types of wearable devices. I know if I eat something I shouldn't, I see the stress spike in my ring, in my app. And I think a lot of my, when I do have stress, I work really hard on my stress and on relaxing and calming down. And I've pretty much got that under control. But I know if I eat something I shouldn't, that's when it shows up on my ring. So yeah, your body knows what to do. If it's getting the right ingredients in, it knows what to do. So yeah, most people that I meet, their sleep does improve just as a function of maybe exercising a bit more and getting the right nutrition.
Yeah, I certainly notice that a lot. One of the things I really love about your work is that you're not only focused on helping the person who is going through this, but you're also helping the family. And from what I can tell, the most important component is if that person is in a relationship, you're working with the significant other or the spouse. Why is that so important when it comes to mental health?
So I do have a mix of clients, actually. I do have clients where I coach the couple. And I just think that is really, really helpful if your partner is doing this with you and supporting you. I mean, even if you just think about the diet, there will be times when you go out and you just want some cake or you want a drink. And if all your friends are going, go on, have a piece of cake, you only live once, it's quite hard to turn that down. Whereas if you've got a partner who's helping you with that, and you're both doing it together, you can be strong for each other. So I think that's really helpful. But I do have clients that I'm coaching just and they just do it on their own. Even if they're in loving relationships, maybe their partner is okay and doesn't want to do it with them. Actually, most partners do end up doing it eventually because they see the improvements, and it's just easier, isn't it, if you're cooking the same thing?
Yeah.
But yes, I have clients who are doing it on their own. But part of the coaching is not just about the things that we've talked about. Sometimes it's about finding a sense of meaning and purpose in life, something to stay strong for, something to look forward to. So that can be really important. Or just finding the joy. You know, if you've noticed your memory's not doing very well and you've been stewing on it for quite some time and you've noticed it getting worse and worse and worse, I can imagine that's quite depressive. And it can be hard to look for the joy in things. And maybe you start withdrawing a bit and just to find the joy in being with your friends and your family and enjoying special times together.
Yeah.
And focusing on that rather than focusing on what's wrong with the brain can be really helpful as well. I mean, there's so many different. I mean, things like just your oral health. Just looking after your mouth has such a massive impact on the brain, and I don't think people always quite appreciate how strong that link is as well. So, I mean, it's every area of your life. There's no part of your life that is untouched by this.
Yep, totally. And I'm sure it's obvious to the listener that, like, if you haven't encountered these things yet in your life, you're in your 20s, you're in your 30s, whatever, all of these same things that we're talking about are going to be important for you to start implementing now so you never have to deal with it down the road. I'm wondering if you can share some stories with us. Do you have any favorite stories of people you've worked with in the last little while that you'd like to share?
My all-time favorite client. When I met her, she'd been working so hard for years. She'd tried lots of things. She knew about Bredesen before I ever did. She had found some people to help her, but wasn't really getting the support. As I say, there was nobody 2.0 trained in the UK, even when I found it. So I think she'd had a really hard time. She'd been so determined. Some of her causes were the really bad ones, like toxins, mold, and mercury, that can have such a massive impact really quite quickly. And interestingly, you can turn them around as well. It's the hardest one. Anything to do with toxins, it's the hardest thing. And you have to go quite slowly. But we have a great success rate with that. But when I first met her, I didn't know if I was going to be able to coach her because she was so scattered. When I was talking to her, I was really struggling to follow what she was saying, and she was skipping from one subject to another. She was very stressed as well with it all. And today she's brilliant. You could talk to her for hours and you wouldn't know. And that's so special.
I love that. I love that. Okay, so there's something I see in this kind of world of health, regardless of what you're kind of dealing with when you're trying to improve somebody's metabolic, cognitive, physical, mental, whatever health, and it's kind of outside of the medical system. I see. I'll give you a good example. The second time I got to interview Nina Teicholz, one of my favorite people on the planet, author of The Big Fat Surprise, we got to kind of the end of the chat, and I asked her like what it meant to her to be doing her nonprofit and selling books and getting the message out, speaking at conferences. And she wasn't disappointed, but and she's not stopping. She keeps putting the word out, but it's like. I'm a little bummed. I'm paraphrasing her answer. I'm a little bummed that like more people, it's not catching on a little bit more, that more people aren't doing this. I started the nonprofit to change the dietary guidelines, and it's just not like making any headway, it seems. And people are writing letters and contacting their lawmakers, and it just doesn't seem to go anywhere. And I've heard you talk, and we talked briefly about this offline, but like you start this business, you completely change what you've done with your life in the pandemic. You take a terrible situation and make it amazing. You've got awesome news to share with everybody. And like, I want you to have 1 million clients. I want you to have tons of people
So do
coming
I.
to you. So do you. So, you know, we started our business in the pandemic, and same thing. We just feel like we've got a message we want to get out to people, and people that are willing to listen. Hopefully we can help. And I would do that for free,
Yeah.
frankly. If you gave me $1 million, I would still do this every single day.
Yeah.
How are you able to stay optimistic when it feels like it's not catching on as quickly as any of us would like?
Oh man, I've had my ups and downs. There's been times where I've just thought, oh, why am I doing this? Why is nobody listening to me? Of course, I have my ups and downs. And then you find a new client who is just so happy to find that they can do something, and it makes it all worthwhile again. And yeah, I go and I do talks. I do talks for all manner of groups. And it's a little bit soul destroying, actually, because you do a talk and you think somebody here is going to want this. This is going to resonate with somebody. And at the end of the talk, everybody's saying, oh, that was amazing. That was really interesting. Thank you so much. They all take a card. They ask you loads of questions about, should I be eating this? Should I be eating that? And then, you know, you have no idea whether they've gone away and even made any changes. And it is a bit soul destroying. But if nobody had told me about this, where would my mum be now? And where would I be? I'm on prevention, you know. Where will I be in the future without this? I mean, I've got to keep telling people. Nobody believed that we could reverse type 2 diabetes. And now everybody knows that you can. It's just, I'm at the forefront of all this. And here in the UK, at least, obviously it's a bit bigger in the US. I mean, it's still not massively well known in the US, but I'm at the forefront here in the UK. And I hope that I can see over the next few years a big change, and that people will start to take more ownership of their health, and reversing all manner of chronic conditions.
That was such a beautiful answer. I hope so too. I hope this message keeps getting out, and you're a big part of that. And your open and joyful personality is absolutely wonderful. I hope you get in front of more people. I hope more people are ready to listen. It might take some time, and it might be way slower than any of us want it to be, but it's really, really good work that you're doing. So thank you so very much for taking the time to come on our show today, Lindsey. Where would you like people to go to find you and connect with you in your work and become clients so that you can help their families and their parents, and let's stop the suffering?
Definitely. So my website is probably a first port of call, which is www.thecognitivhealthcoach.co.uk. You can join my Facebook group, which is free to join, and that is Hope in Alzheimer's UK. You can find me on LinkedIn. I am The Cognitive Health Coach, and I am also The Cognitive Health Coach on Facebook generally. And I've got a few videos on YouTube. I've got a YouTube channel, which is also called The Cognitive Health Coach. So you can find lots of free tips and me talking about various things and helping people think about keto or exercise or oral health or whatever it may be.
Excellent. We will link all of that in the show notes. Please, whatever you do, keep it up. Keep up the great work. There is somebody out there that's going to hear you and hear this conversation and want to change. They'll be ready for it. And so we need people like you to keep getting that message out. Lindsey, thank you so very much again for all of your amazing work, for helping your own family, which must be so special, and for taking the time to come on our show today. We really appreciate you.
Oh, I really appreciate you letting me come on here and talk about this, because this is the only way to get the message out there, isn't it? For people to hear this. And even if they don't need it straight away, that they know that it is something that can be done, and they can share that with other people that they come across, and hopefully not need it themselves in the future.
Totally agree. Well, thanks again for coming on. We really appreciate you.
Thank you.
And this has been another episode of Boundless Body Radio. Thank you so very much for continuing to listen to Boundless Body Radio. As 2023 has come to a close and we're starting another new year in 2024, I always try to reflect on not only the direction that we want to go in the future, but also how much we have grown in this last year. Our podcast has now generated well over 400,000 downloads from all over the world, and it's all thanks to fantastic listeners like yourself. I hope you are as excited for the new year as we are around here. The lineup of guests that we have coming up is absolutely staggering, and we're always striving to bring you the best content from the most amazing people in health, nutrition, and wellness. Remember that you can always head on over to our website to book a complimentary 30-minute session with us at myboundlessbody.com. On our homepage, there is a Book Now button where you can select a time to speak with us about your health and fitness plan, especially for the new year. We've absolutely loved chatting with so many of you out there to bounce ideas off each other and try to come up with plans to help you achieve specific goals. And seriously, I really do mean this. Even if it's just to say hello and introduce yourself, we absolutely love connecting with our listeners in the community. Be sure to check out our YouTube channel as well if you want to watch these full interviews and also shorter interviews on more specific topics that are taken from these interviews. We've gotten really great feedback over there, and it's also a really fun way to interact with people who comment. We read and reply to every single YouTube comment we get, so be sure to subscribe to our channel and leave as many comments as you like to keep the conversation going. And of course, if you haven't already, please leave us a 5-star rating and review on Apple Podcasts. It really is the best way to make sure that the podcast gets out to more listeners. Your 5-star ratings and reviews are the best way to support us here at Boundless Body, and to support the podcast at Boundless Body Radio really only takes a moment, and it's very meaningful to us. Cheers to 2024, and thank you again for listening to Boundless Body Radio.